Have you ever experienced or witnessed a real world's dumbest criminals moment? Not mine, but rather my sister's coworker. Pardon the third-hand information. So my sister used to work at a bank and a Walmart, and her coworker had this somewhat older pickup truck, about 15 years old at the time of this story. The truck was pretty unremarkable in every way: stock parts, stock stereo, average looking. Some idiot punched out the driver's side window and stole the CD player, which didn't play past track 7 on any given CD. Mind you, it was stock and also 15 years old. Instead of disconnecting the plugs like a normal thief, he cut all the wires, making it a stolen CD player that now required repair. The idiot made a mess all over the inside of the truck because he punched the window in and proceeded to wrap his hand up in one of the girls' spare work shirts. After taking the CD player, he then walks into Walmart and tries to steal a TV. Not one of the newer TVs that only weighs like 25 pounds, but the big tube TVs that weigh like 80. So when he walked out, the alarm went off. He told the person at the door that it was a return and he was simply taking his old one back to his car. Keep in mind that he still had a red bank teller's polo wrapped around his hand. It had an employee's name on it, an employee who was working at that store at that moment. Of course, the friend in the store pressed charges. The friend was also offered an appearance on one of those judge TV shows, but declined because the case was too stupid for a daytime judge show. Right, too stupid for a daytime judge show because damn, that's an entirely deeper circle of stupid. Story 2. Over the last 2 years, I worked at a Jimmy John's and one day we got robbed. He waited for all the customers to stop pouring in and went to the bathroom for about 15 minutes. Was he about to whiz himself from excitement? Did he get a sudden call of nature? I don't know, but a coworker walked by during this time and heard him loudly talking to himself, which I guess was to get pumped up. Then he finally walks out to a completely empty JJ's, orders a sandwich. He was clearly nervous and something was up. As soon as the register was open, he goes, "I have a knife, give me all your frickin' money." The girl on the register was a super nice girl, so she totally blanked. However, our GM at the time, a fat Mexican guy in his mid 20s who grew up in a bad neighborhood, just nonchalantly goes, "I don't believe you. Show me your knife." The robber starts bickering with our GM, but the GM stays calm and tells him to show it. So he finally takes his knife out and waves it at us, saying he'll frickin' jab us if we don't give him the money. Now, here's the best part. We all work with knives and they're really frickin' sharp, but our Mexican, it's an affectionate term, takes this as a challenge and grabs our knife and starts chasing him out the store and down the street. The best part is he's so short and fat, he's waddling in an apron as he's running, yelling, "Fight me like a man, Yoto." When the police came, the guy was gone, but to this day, our GM tells that story to every new person we hire. Store was in Carroll Stream. The GM's name was Sebastian. Story 3. When I was 19, I was the target of a failed carjacking by what appeared to be some sort of gang initiation. It's funny how you remember all the little details of a moment like that. It was about 10 p.m., and I pulled up to a red light after having dropped my girlfriend off. There was a late 80s tan Chevy Celebrity in the left turn lane. Suddenly, the driver door of my 1994 Saturn opens, and I turned to see a young, maybe 17-year-old black female in a black sweatshirt and jeans. Just as I'm registering what I'm seeing, she points the end of the chrome and black 99mm handgun on me. "Get out of the car," she says the words, but her voice is actually quite quivery. She's clearly very nervous, but she is the one holding a fairly large weapon and pointing it squarely at me. In the background, I can hear her friends. There's more than 2 of them, and from their car comes a torrent of derogatory names and slurs at me. I suppose as encouragement for her? I put my hands up, adrenaline kicks in, my mind goes into this sort of disconnected, hyper-observant state. I find myself analyzing all sorts of weird details while my brain makes what seems like autopilot decisions on what to do next. I considered trying to speed off, but unfortunately I drove a manual and had previously put it in neutral and pulled the handbrake. Now this is a particularly long red light as I'm on a small street crossing a major thoroughfare. I could see this girl's finger squarely on the trigger of this gun, and she is clearly nervous. I have to assume the gun is loaded and she could kill me by accident if I make a sudden move. I noticed that the song I had been playing rather loudly, Hitherto by the Cockatoo Twins, paints this entire situation in an oddly surreal and appropriately dark light. That thought is suddenly interrupted by her actually hitting me in the forehead with the end of the weapon. I said, get the hell out of the car. I decide to do what she says, but I assume her friends are armed too, and I'm actually thinking about the possibility they might me, even if she doesn't. I slowly undo the lap belt. Mine was one of those early 90s cars that had those automatic shoulder belts that helpfully move forward when you, or in this case, an underage gun wielding gang member, open the door and climb out of the driver's seat with my hands up. While doing this, my carjacker and I never break eye contact. I am now standing between the two cars, abeam the rear doors. My carjacker is standing by the driver door of mine, facing me and still pointing the gun at me. I steal a glance at her friends. There are at least four of them. It's dark, so I can't see into their car clearly enough to see if they're also armed. They continue to encourage her and call me names. I see cars stop at the crossing intersection, notice us, and then speed off. On the one hand, I feel abandoned by them. On the other hand, I wouldn't want some vigilante to decide to intervene and get me. I look back at my carjacker. Her arms are extended straight ahead of her shoulders, like she's either trying to be extra menacing with a gun or wants to hold it as far away from her body as she possibly can. Her finger is still on the trigger, the end of the gun is shaking. It occurs to me, again, that she could accidentally easily fire this thing. My immediate thought is to try and calm her down. I hear myself in a shockingly calm voice say, I'm not going to do anything. What do you want to do now? Give me your loot. Honestly, that's what she said. I know this because having several friends who are SCA members, what I hear is, give me your loot. And I must have given her the most puzzling look ever displayed by a carjacking victim in all of history, because who the heck says loot? Give me your goddamn wallet. Oh, right, duh. So I remove my wallet from my pocket and I hold it out for her. She snatches it, but then finds herself in the awkward position of having her hands full and not wanting to turn her back on me. She looks from me to my car door to me and back a couple of times like she's trying to work out what to do next. I decided it would be best to let her and her friends know that she doesn't need any assistance from any of them. I start backing away slowly. I nod towards my car, sitting there with the door open, engine running, and Cockatoo Twins music blaring. Go ahead, I'm not going to stop you. About the time I get to the back of the two cars, she jumps into mine and closes the door. Her friends peel out through the red light and are almost T-boned by a pickup, which would have totally made my night, but the collision is avoided and they continue on. I walk around the back of my car to the curb, assessing the area and realizing there is not a gas station or payphone within a block of here. Again, it was the early 90s. I wasn't a substance dealer or stockbroker, so I didn't have a cell phone. So I round the corner and start the trek up the larger thoroughfare towards the next block where there are actually gas stations that's when I realized it. I can still hear my car, muffled Cockatoo Twins music and all. The engine is revving over and spinning back to idle. The horn beeps. The engine revs again. Oh my god. I turned around to confirm what I'm hearing as the ridiculous realization hits me full force. This girl has no idea how to drive a manual transmission vehicle. I look back and see her furiously banging on the inside of my car, trying to figure out what to do. The transmission in the early 90s Saturns was fairly stiff, and the Syncross would completely prevent you from forcing it into gear without the clutch, which was apparently all she had thought to try and do. She pulled and shoved and stomped the gas, and nothing happened. Finally, after what must have seemed like forever for her friends came back to investigate. The shouted conversation across the road went like this. What's wrong? I can't drive a stick. What? I can't drive a frickin' stick, goddammit. Get in the frickin' car, stupid. Make sure you got his wallet. So that's how, after being carjacked, I was able to drive my own car back home and call 911. I did lose my wallet, but I got this cool story to tell. Story 4. I work at my family's liquor store, and we have a debit credit machine where we take the card, punch in our store ID, cashier ID, then amount, stick the card in, and hand it back. So this one fellow comes in and grabs a six-pack from the cooler and comes to the counter. He was the only other person in the store besides a random guy in a corner going through wine, so I ran the six-pack in when I saw him grab it. He came up to the till and I asked him how he was doing, and he said fine, and I told him his total as he was just pulling up to the till. And he mumbled something and reached into his coat and pulled out a gun and placed it on the counter with the barrel, or whatever you call that part that it shoots from, facing me and slides it a few inches forward. Due to being used to people doing that with credit debit cards, I just stretched out and grabbed the gun with one hand and the debit machine in the other. He wasn't holding onto it very firmly, so I just pulled it away and realized as soon as I grabbed it that it was a gun, not a credit card. So I froze with his gun in my hand and the debit machine in the other. We looked at each other and then he bolted, leaving the gun behind. I called my uncle and then the cops who came and took a statement and afterwards told me that the gun was empty, so I wasn't in any real danger, but it's still one of the funniest things to ever happen to me. All right, so he must have looked like such a baddie for that half second that he didn't even realize what he was doing. Poor guy was trying to trade his gun for a six pack and he turned it on him. All right, so if you're enjoying the video so far, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Let's go on to the next story. Story 5. I work part time in a grocery store that is robbed all the damn time. Like, seriously, once or twice every month. It's gotten to the point where I now just laugh every time I arrive at work to see the store has been broken into again. So, one particular night, just before we were beginning to close, a brazen robber ran into the store who appeared to be no older than 20 with a cricket bat and nervously demanded the money from the register. The clerk obeys and gives the man about $200. The reward hardly seems proportional to the potential ramifications. And at this point, the customers at the front end are backing away. The man attempts to make an escape. As he breaks for the door while I'm standing in an adjacent aisle where the soup pleasantly happens to be shelved, I grab a big old can of tomato soup and give it a friendly toss in the vicinity of his face. KO, slam dunk, hole in one. He takes a comical fall into the flower display in a glorious explosion of flowers and water. Then every male customer jumps on the jerk and pins him down until the police arrive. Story 6. Not my own story, but an acquaintance from years ago. He was working nights at a gas station, a convenience store, and had a group of usual customers who he got to know the comings and goings of. One man in particular was known to pretty much always wear the same clothes and stood out because he only had one eye and, being poor, wore a patch over the non-functioning eye. He came there every night to buy cigarettes and also rented movies a couple of times per week, so the store had his name and address. One night, old acquaintance was working at the station when Eye Patch Man came in, but he was wearing a large paper bag on his head. Employee: "Hey man, here for your usual smokes?" Patch: "No, this is a frickin' robbery." Employee: "Ha ha ha, good one," and proceeds to put this guy's cigarettes on the counter. Patch: "I'm serious, give me all the money in the drawer." Eventually, the guy figured out the robbery attempt was real, handed over the money, and then called the police when the Eye Patch Man left. Now, it's pretty stupid to rob a place where you regularly shop and where they have your name on a computer as a video renter, but even more dumb than that, he only cut one eye hole in the paper bag. Okay, so it's things like this that make me think I could get away with crimes and cutting two wouldn't help at that point anyway, huh? Story 7. I work at a grocery store, and a few months ago, a gentleman decided to steal some steaks. This is pretty common. Steaks are easily the most common big items that get shoplifted here. Most people think stick them in a coat pocket or something and walk right out. Not this guy. This guy had a better plan. He took them out of the wrapper and placed them under his hat. Now, if he would have just left the store right now, like most people that take stuff, he would likely have gotten away with it. But the meathead decides that would look too suspicious. So he goes to the register and buys one pack of gum. That's it, because a guy waiting in line for 10 minutes to buy a single pack of gum at a giant grocery store doesn't look suspicious. Also, what made him look suspicious was that there was red dripping down his face from the steak. I wish I could have seen it, but apparently it was enough for the cashier to ask if he was okay. He freaks out. They actually called an ambulance for him. He waits for the ambulance to arrive, and obviously they did not find anything other than meat under that hat. There was another situation, and this one that I actually dealt with personally. I work in the prepared foods department where we sell fried chicken, pre-made potato salads. During the summer, most of our business comes from doing large catering orders, typically for graduation parties. We had a very large order for a 2 o'clock pickup, about a $350 order, which is usually big enough to qualify for the largest of the week. So the lady who placed the order, who didn't prepay for it, which is pretty rare for orders of this size, came in to pick it up at noon. We tell her that we don't have any of her food done yet because we have her down for 2. She starts crying, saying that we screwed up, which is common. We do, a lot. We're not very organized with this system, and I work with some boneheads myself included. that this was for a funeral reception, etc., etc., etc. She pointed out she already grabbed a large sheet cake from the bakery that they had at noon. This was good enough for us. So we're in full panic mode because we had messed up big time here. We slowly pieced together about $200 worth of food from anything prepared that we have laying around. And the store manager told us to be prepared to give it to her for free because not only is it less than what she ordered fried chicken and potatoes, and we're giving her baked chicken and green beans. So we go to ring her out and tell her that we're still going to have to charge her for the cake. I didn't really notice it at the time, but she got weird about it. She said she didn't have the price tag, to which I replied, "No problem, I'll just call the bakery real quick." So I do. "Oh, she's getting that cake for free. We messed up. She placed an order for noon, but we took her down for 2. Hmm, what are the chances that two departments messed this up?" So I get the store manager and he confronts her and she runs out of the store crying. We'd like to think that she really did need to cater an event with $230 worth of food, and since she tried to scam it out of us, she showed up empty handed. The cool part is that we got to eat the cake after. Story 8. I used to work at a liquor store in my college town, usually nights and weekends, aka the busy shifts, because I had been working there the longest. This also made me the de facto head clerk while the owner was in his home above the store. The store was laid out so that the front door was right by the registers and the back door was right by the entrance to the beer coolers, partially hidden by the aisles. One particularly busy night, while going to restock the beer coolers during a lull, I saw a couple girls exit the back door from what looked like the beer cooler. Since I didn't see them leave the cooler specifically, I called the owner to make sure. He confirmed from the security camera footage that they went into the cooler and grabbed a couple of things before seeing me approach and bolting. Unfortunately, the camera never got a good shot of their faces, so I figured they got away scot-free. That is until I went into the cooler to finish restocking and saw that one of them had left their Android phone on a shelf in the cooler. I took it back behind the counter and waited. Sure enough, they all came back, and one of them asks if we found her phone. I say, "Sure, do you have the beer you stole?" assuming she would know the gig is up. Nope, she insists that she was looking for the bathroom. At this point, I called the owner again to ask if I should call the cops. He says he's feeling merciful and will give up the phone if they pay $20, which was only a little more than the value of the beer they stole. By now, her friends have left, so I relay her the owner's deal. Intent on demonstrating that her supply of stupidity has not been exhausted, she claims to not have a credit card or cash despite having a rather full purse, and demands to see her phone so she can see if it's really mine. At that point, I told her to give me the 20 or we'll just keep the phone. She still refuses to pay, despite the fact that her phone was worth at least $500. Then she threatens to call the cops and accuse me of stealing her phone. The fact that A, I was holding her phone in my hand, and B, she was the one who stole from us in the first place did nothing to dissuade her. I was only able to get her to pay the money when I picked up the store phone and started dialing the number for the local station. Okay, I wonder why her phone was out while stealing beer, probably updating her social media about it. Smart, right? All right, so if you liked any of these stories and were affected by any one of them, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for hanging with me on this one.